I am joined this time by Daniel Korbel. Welcome, Daniel.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
First question is always, how did you learn bridge?
Well, I always loved games as a child, and especially card games. My family would sit around and play card games. So basically, I loved like every card game. I really loved them all. I actually read Hoyle's Book of Cards. Like back in the day, there wasn't the internet when I was a kid. So I had like 100 games in there, right? And one of them was bridge. And you can imagine in like 2 or 3 pages that this book had, it didn't really tell you anything about bridge. But I knew of its existence. But my dad's best friend was a life master at bridge. And when I turned 14, he gave me Watson's Play of the Hand as a birthday gift. It's a book from 1922 or whenever it was written that's hard to read. It's like a textbook, if you've ever read it. Whenever I criticize the book like that, people are always like, no, I love that book. I'm not saying it's a bad book. That's where I learned bridge from, but it is hard to read because it's written in that old, archaic, stuffy way. So I read it cover to cover. It was a bit of a slog. It literally starts with aces beat kings, kings beat queens. It starts from the very, very basics. And as you get further into the book, it teaches you about bidding and it teaches you about squeezes, even card play. So I got some idea about bridge from that. And I decided, you know what? Okay, this is interesting. I don't really quite get it, but I'll give it a chance. So I went to the public library at some point. I was 14 and I took out, I remember 3 books on bridge. I think one was by Ron Klinger. It's like Learn to Bid Akal. Another one I think might have been Bill Root's Play of the Hand. And the third one was Bridge in the Menagerie by Victor Malo. Okay. Now, I'm sure some of your viewers are familiar with the Menagerie series, but for any that aren't, it's these humorous stories where the main characters are all animals and they all have their own personalities and their own character strengths and weaknesses and flaws. And the moment I read that book, it connected with something in me that had never been awakened yet. And I knew this was magical. The way the cards danced in that book, the way the players interacted with each other. And I was just like, I love this. I want this to be part of my life. And from that moment on, I was addicted to bridge completely. And I read every single book in the entire Toronto Public Library system about bridge, often more than once. I would just immersed myself in the game. I would play a little bit on Yahoo Bridge. I mean, that was terrible bridge, so I didn't play much, but I introduced it into my friend group in school. We would play at lunch, which I think was unusual to have like people under 20 just playing bridge on their own with no direction from anyone. And it was 4 years before I played any organized bridge. I played it the first time in my final year of high school. Once high school was over in the summer, I would play with one of my high school friends. And so basically the very first time I ever played bridge, I had maybe read the equivalent of 150 books on it, right? And thought about it immensely. I was pretty good for a brand new player. I remember when we came to the club, they were like shocked to see us. Here are these 2 random young people that no one had ever seen before, right? We didn't know how to fill out a convention card. Okay. But when we sat down with the local club player and he sat down with us and helped us fill out the card. And I think he was probably a little surprised that we like knew most of the conventions on the card and we're playing a lot of them, like we were like ready for bridge. And so that was my introduction.
So you read all of Watson's Play of the Hand before you touched a card?
I basically read every bridge book I could before I ever touched a card. But yes, I read all of Watson's Play of the Hand before I played.
That's got to be a unique introduction.
I suspect so. Like I said, like I got taken over by passion for this game from the Malo books. I give Victor Malo credit for the fact that I play bridge today, because without those books, I might have been interested in it. I might have tried it. I don't know that it would have invoked that amount of passion that I just wanted to immerse myself.
All right. So you're now graduated from high school. You go to your first duplicate. How'd you do in that first duplicate? Do you remember?
Yeah, I remember. So as you might imagine, we were a little better than your typical first duplicate players, right? I could certainly play the cards quite well, as could my partner. And we had some idea about the bidding. Like I'd read a lot of bidding books, a lot of bidding theory. And so we actually did quite well that duplicate. What we didn't know how to do yet was really keep the count of a hand in our minds. So there, for a long time, there was a lot of trick 12. I don't know which of these aces to keep. I don't know what declare's last card is. I mean, that obviously doesn't happen to an expert anymore. You always know the hand by then, right? But back then, we were just playing cards, right? But I remember we had 59%. And the only reason we didn't win was because I hadn't yet learned how to control my emotions at the table. And there was a hand. I opened 1 spade. My partner jumped to 3 spades, limit raise. And I thought to myself, could we have a slam? I had quite a good hand. But I'm thinking to myself, okay, we can't quite really have a slam. I'm probably just going to take 10 or 11 tricks. And I bid four spades. Okay. Pass, pass. And this opportunistic lady on my right, who knew it was our first duplicate and probably sensed uncertainty and hesitation, doubled. Okay. And now my heart started pounding and the adrenaline started rushing. And I reached in, I really did. I slammed the redouble on the table. It's for you, lady. Okay. So dummy hits. I'm in a fabulous four spade contract. It's absolutely ice cold. But with the adrenaline rushing through my body, that was in control, not my mind. And I played a few tricks. I drew a trump. Of course, they were 4-0. I drew another trump. And now I remembered, wait a second, what am I doing? And I looked at the dummy and I said, oh crap, I have to rough some diamonds in the dummy. So I let a diamond. She played a trump back. I let a diamond. She played a trump back. And I went down one for no reason. And that was actually an important lesson to learn that, like, if that adrenaline hits, stop playing, wait for it to pass and refocus yourself.
So I assume this was a good experience.
Yeah, both my partner and I got addicted. We played like every chance we could that whole summer. We were regulars at the Olympia. We would go to another game that was further away. I would take like a bus for an hour and a half to get there. We would occasionally play downtown Toronto. That would also take an hour and a half to get there. We just played every chance we got, basically.
And then college? Did you go to college next?
Did, but it's more like I went to bridge and college was like a side thing I was doing. It actually took me 8 years to get my undergrad degree just because I was so focused on bridge and like I didn't have any passion for school. So at that time, I started playing a lot more tournaments as opposed to just at the local club. I played a lot at the local club in Waterloo where I went to school, but I ended up going to tournaments much more regularly.
Did you get involved in the Canadian Junior program?
I did. I represented Canada twice in the junior program. Once in the Junior World Championships. I played with my first wife, Susan, and once in university competitions. The World Championships was in Bangkok, Thailand, and the junior competition was in Tianjin, China, which is an hour or two outside of Beijing. So, it was really fun to see those parts of the world. I really, really, really treasure both those experiences.
Was there a moment when you were like, I have a chance to be really good at this game?
Yes, I could feel from the start that like I was good at bridge, like I could tell my brain worked in the right way. And I think it's because I spent so much time immersing myself in it from the years of like 14 to 20, 21. When you immerse yourself in anything, you develop stronger neurons in your brain, stronger connections. When you do it young, when your brain is still very plastic and unformed, they become even stronger, right? That's just the way of human biology works. So I always believed I could be really good. But the moment where it really clicked, I remember, was at a regional in Ottawa. And up until that time, I had been really struggling with counting out the hands. Like one of the most important skills you can learn to get really good at bridge is keeping track of the count of all the suits and the shapes of people's hands around the table. So you know what cards people have left or what they started with or what's going on. And that's what really allows you to make a very calculated, very precise plan of attack. And I was always struggling with that, trying really hard, but still having situations where I lost the thread up until this regional. And what I did was, and it's very weird to me now, but I created a ritual for myself where after every round, I would go fill up an entire thermos of water, chug it. Okay. And so between rounds, I would be running off to the bathroom. My bladder is just chock full all day long. But for some reason, this like focused my intent. And that week, I was able to start keeping the count in my head much more accurately. And that's when I knew, okay, I can really play bridge. This is like next level. This is like, I'm way more consistent than I was even a week ago.
What did you do to work on that skill specifically?
The counting skill?
Yeah, other than downing the water, right? Before that, like you said, you had been working on it. Like, what did that work look like?
This is one of the most important things and yet one of the most difficult things that anyone can do. If I would say it took me about a little over a year, maybe 6 months of intense effort to train that in myself. And I was younger and really committed to it. So this can be like a long-term process for a lot of people. What you need to do is set an intention before you play that you're going to count, right? And keep it trained to your ability level. You don't want to say, all right, today I'm going to count every hand and be perfect on it. You're not going to start out that way, right? If you've never done it, you're going to say, today I'm going to count trumps and keep in my mind the shapes of the trump suit around the table. It can be as simple as remembering the Claire started with a 6-card suit this time, or a 5-card suit this time, or that the trumps were 4-4, right? You need to be able to start training your mind to think that way. Once you've got that step down, you can move on to trying to count declares exact starting shape, because usually the auction gives you a lot of clues, right? Your partner's opening lead is going to help you count the shapes too. This is why I recommend playing a lead that helps you get the count, such as third and fifth leads against suits, which are much better at helping you figure out, before you've seen a single card played by anybody, what the shapes are around the table. Okay. Another thing that's really important to do, and I notice most of my students have a lot of trouble with this, which I wouldn't have guessed before I started teaching, is that you've got to be able to take four numbers and make sure they add up to 13, like 4432, 6511, 6403. These have to become like easy for your mind. Okay. And you can do this. In fact, Fred Gittleman made a little app, and I'm sure there's another game out there now online that just feeds you three of the numbers. And your job is to fill in that fourth number as quickly as you can, right? It'll send you 542 on your screen. And your job is to, oh yeah, two. That's the last number, right? And the more you practice with this, the easier your brain will have at the table. When you know it's 5-4 and you see two in the dummy, you're going to think two, right? You're going to know it. You're not going to have to invest your energy in that, which is sort of like the building blocks to counting. So that's what I would recommend, those steps. Set an intention when you play of counting like at or slightly above your ability level, and make sure you're spending some time in your free time doing counting. I also learned a lot from books, as I said. So you can do like the defense books by Hugh Kelsey. They're going to be really, really hard problems, but he'll walk you through how the counting gets you to the solution. And so you can learn like why you're doing it, like how the process like works.
There's a relatively new book that's Eddie Cantor lessons that the
Okay.
Granovetters published. It's called How to Count a Bridge Hand, which is fantastic. I recommend that as well. So when did you realize like maybe this could be your profession?
I mean, I don't think anybody becomes a bridge professional intentionally, right? Like it sort of happens to you. The way it happened to me was I started playing with a top Canadian player named Jonathan Steinberg, who had a lot of master points at the time. And at first I played with him, just as a peer. I learned a lot from him. But after like a little bit of time, I realized, wait a second, playing bridge is costing me a lot of money. I don't have any money. I'm just a kid. I'm burning through the money I have. I got to focus on my life. I got to focus on school, right? I can't be doing this. So when I said that to Jonathan, sorry, Jonathan, I like playing with you, but I really can't afford this. He quickly said, listen, you play with me and I'll pay a little bit of money to do so. Like I'll pay your expenses and a little bit extra. And it was actually more than my part-time job was making me at the time. So this way, I got to go and play bridge for the week, get better, learn, and make more money than I would at home, slaving away at McDonald's, right? And so for a long time, that was my arrangement. I was like part-time student. I still part-time McDonald's and part-time bridge pro. As a bridge pro, I think most people start out with this kind of situation, like one client, one person at the club who says, I'll play with you every week. I'll pay you X amount. And over time, and this took a long time, but over time, the bridge community starts to get to know you and you start to get to know them, and people start to respect your game, start to respect you as a person. And over time, other opportunities opened up to me.
So when did you become a full-time pro?
For a long time, it was kind of part-time. I was trying to finish my schooling. I was trying to possibly go into like a regular 9-to-5 kind of career. I mean, I know that's a lot easier to like raise a family when you're always around, right? But by the time I was 28, I realized I just actually wanted to do this. And I was getting enough work that I realized I could support myself fully on it. So I quit my part-time job at McDonald's, finished my degree and left it alone, and started playing full-time. And for a while, it was still mostly playing with Jonathan. After a while, we sort of decided to part ways. Like bridge partnerships can very much be like relationships where they have a lifespan. They serve their purpose, but after a while, you've outgrown each other in some way, And so we kind of outgrew each other. And at that point, I took a leap of faith, I just trusted, the universe would bring me something. So at that point, the universe brought me my first big team for the Nationals, which was playing with Hugh Bertens on the Richie Schwartz team. And that was very exciting to me. And I'll never forget when we joined the team, I was a little nervous, right? As you might imagine, this is like a pretty big deal to me. And my teammates were Boya Brogland and his partner, who's, Boya the Sheriff. This guy's an absolute legend in bridge. And I remember after we joined the team at the first Nationals, I was nervous. And Alan Graves, who was Richie's partner, came up to me, and said, listen, guys, you don't need to worry. follow your judgment. You're on the team because of like your ability and who you are. It's okay if you make mistakes. We're all in this together, you know? And that was just the exact thing I needed to hear at that time. That like, okay, let's just go for it. This isn't about, am I going to screw up? Am I going to let anyone down? This is like, let's freaking go. So we actually won 2 nationals that cycle. It was really a magical cycle.
What a good teammate.
Yeah, Alan was a great team.
Another Canadian who's moved to the
Another Canadian
US.
who lives in Vermont.
All right. So you guys won a couple things there. And, now you're establishing yourself as a, like, this is someone worth hiring, right?
Yeah, I think my career started to grow quicker from there. I actually played as Richie's partner the next year, and we had 2 second places. So, that was a very hot time for me. 2 firsts and 2 seconds in 2 years is a lot of success. Like, it's not easy to win at the top, right? Like, you're just grateful for any success you have, really. It's that competitive. And, I started playing on more regional teams more regularly, and establishing a bigger client base. And I'm very grateful for all of it. Every single experience that I've had has like shaped me in some way.
And at some point, that included the decision to move to America.
Yeah, I had been sort of trying to be a bridge pro from Canada for quite some time. At the very start, before I knew anything, I was just going over and coming back and whatever. But like eventually I got a visa through Jason Feldman's company. It was an O1 visa, which at the time was gettable. I don't know that you can get that anymore for being a bridge pro, but it meant people who are extraordinary in their field. I'm grateful that they considered me that way. That allowed me to cross freely between the 2 countries. But it was still a pain, like crossing the border takes time. Flying out of Toronto was annoying since I lived in Waterloo. It was expensive, took a long time. I had to budget an extra day before and after usually to get there to the tournaments. It just wasn't efficient. And after my first wife and I split, I got into a relationship with Sylvia. She was a great player. And so there was a strong temptation to spend more time with her. So we eventually decided, she was living in Rockville, Maryland at the time. And I decided to move to Rockville, Maryland, on my visa. It was just like all around made perfect sense. I'm pursuing my relationship and my career at the same time. And that was, I believe, in 2015, maybe. So about 10 years ago.
No looking back.
Yeah, no, I've never regretted that decision.
What do you do on a, daily, weekly, monthly basis to work on your game and keep yourself sharp?
One important thing at the expert level, your card play is kind of what it is once you're an expert. Like it's hard to train that up much higher. Like you can. Like what I did, like when I was really learning squeezes, was like bury myself in Clyde Love's book, and I couldn't handle his terminology. So I would just take the deals and use my own mental process to do them. And I noticed a marked increase in the ability to squeeze people and to see squeezes. So one thing you can do is to really like focus your intention on like books and learning. What I do these days though isn't like that at all. These days, I think what top players do and where the growth comes from is in the development of your partnership, because the biggest difference that you can make at the top level is having a cohesive partnership, because there are so many situations that come up in both the bidding and the play that you can look at it more than one angle. And you and your partner need to know what angle you guys are looking at it from in order to be successful. And so what I do in order to prepare for bridge is spend time with my partnerships on our bidding system and more importantly on our agreements. And so what I've got in my phone actually is a notes file. And it has like a section for each partner that I play with. And anytime an agreement comes up or a situation comes up at the table, it only takes a few seconds. I'll just pull out my phone, go to my notes and just put it in there. And now we have a record of an agreement, right? What I've also got is like a sheet of common agreement situations that I will go through with every partner that I play with, just to make sure that we know like the most common agreement situations. But there are so many situations in the bidding and even in the play that it's hard to cover everything in a short time. In fact, Alfredo Versace, who's a super famous, legendary Italian player, once said famously, and this stuck in my mind, it takes about 2 years for an expert partnership to get to where they want to be. And that's because there are just too many situations and everyone's style is just slightly different, that he thinks it takes about 2 years to get fully in tune with your partner. But you have to do the prep work to be able to get there, right? If you just show up with no prep, you didn't read your notes, you never talk about hands, you never try to figure out how the other person's thinking, you're not going to get anywhere. You're just going to like be at your competence level and you'll never grow to be that partnership that people are afraid of that like really do well.
So what kind of tools do you use to work on partnerships?
Well, these days there's this awesome app called Cubids. Cubids is like a godsend. What we used to have to do is go on Bridgebase and set parameters for bidding and have it deal us hands and you can bid. I still do that sometimes, especially when you want it rapid fire when you're on the phone together and you can talk it through. But Cubids is a way to do that in a way that fits into your life better. You can sort of do it across talk on the app. I'll give you an example. I played with Zia in the team trials last year, and Zia, by the way, is a master of preparation. It's really, really important to him that he's prepared and his partnership is prepared. We would talk every single day for an hour or two, and what we would do, we would go through the notes. He would talk about situations, his philosophy on them to make sure that we understood on the same page what the philosophy was. And you can imagine this takes time, right? You've got to be present. You got to be listening. You got to be processing. And we would also use Cubids a lot and bid on Cubids. And on Cubids, there's like a little blue button at the bottom right where you can talk to your partner. And I've never bid with anyone who uses that button more than Zia. No, he's just constantly typing in there, wanting thoughts, discussion, just synchronizing the wavelength. And I think like at my level, that's the prep that's needed. I mean, I think that's good at any level, but I think if you're still needing to improve your game in certain areas, it's also very important to take time and focus on those areas in some productive way.
Do you have any mentors at this point? Like if you come across a situation and you're just like, I'm really
Yeah.
not sure, like who do you
Yes.
turn to?
So the expert community, we all sort of have our strengths and weaknesses, right? Um, there's a few people that I turn to specifically for strange bidding situations where I'm not sure how to think about them. Roger Lee, who's someone I play with regularly, he, in my opinion, is a great bridge mind and he thinks deeply about the bidding. Whereas I'm a little more la la la. I understand it, but I don't spend my spare time thinking about the bidding. And so when I want to understand a bidding situation, I always turn to Roger and say, Roger, what do you think about this situation? And chances are he's encountered it before, and he says, well, in this spot, I think this. And I'm like, oh, interesting. And I'll gain a perspective on it, right? When it comes to precision, if I need to know a precision thing, I always text Jeff Hampson. He plays precision with Eric Greco like regularly. They play all the time. He's very comfortable, familiar with it. He totally understands all the inference as well. That's to me like a very valuable resource. When it's simply like a situation, like a judgment or a system situation, I just will go to whoever I feel I want their input. It could be any pro, if it's a polling situation, like I have no idea and I just need to hear a lot of people's opinions, I'll go to a lot of people.
Let me give you a hypothetical. So let's say that it's the team trials and there's a last minute issue. They need you to come in and play and you have a day or two to get ready to play with someone you've never played with before. What does that day or two look like in terms of discussion with that new partner?
First of all, you keep your bidding simple, something both you and your partner are very good at. Okay. So I would say most experts are very good at bidding 2/1, right? Because we've done so much of it. So I would personally keep my system to 2/1. I would go over with my partner certain bells and whistles that I might like. For example, like a spiral raise ask as a convention, right? I might ask them, do they want to play like puppet stamen over one no trump? What kind of two-way new minor forcing are we playing? Like getting the nuts and bolts down where people's systems are a little different. It's very important to me to find out their style on certain things. It's important to me to talk about carding situations, make sure we're on the same page there, because people do think about defending a little bit differently. Some people like a lot of count. Some people like a lot of suit preference. Some people kind of just go with the flow and do what they feel is right. So basically what I'm doing is I'm playing a very simple bidding method and then going over the agreements as best as I can in that time. It's also really important to talk about doubles because doubles in the modern game are very complicated because they mean all sorts of things. And some people, when, like in the modern expert community, any undiscussed double in a competitive auction usually just says, hey, I still want to be in this auction. Like, what about you? Right? Or, hey, like I have extras. Like, it's not really for penalties. Different experts will approach these doubles a little differently. And some will pass them much more often than others do when they have nothing good to do. If you're playing opposite one of those players, you better have some defense when you double because like if they're passing them pretty often, you don't want to be bringing back minus 730 or having help us minus 1130, back to your teammates because you guys weren't on the same page as to what to expect from these kind of situations, right? So that's what I would do if I only had a day or two.
So, playing with a new partner, are there any conventions that are like must haves for you and any that are absolutely no, won't do it?
That's going to let me get up on my soapbox a little bit, which is bridge is not about conventions. It's about taking your tricks. It's about bidding judgment, right? I'd rather play no conventions with an expert than I would want to play every possible convention with a lesser player because it's all about the judgment. It's all about the card play. And I know a lot of your listeners are going to hate this because learning a convention is everyone's favorite thing to do, I've noticed. And I know why. It's because learning convention is fun, it's exciting, and it gives you that feeling of improvement. Well, I've learned something. I'm going to be better at the bidding. I've improved myself as a bridge player by learning this convention. That's the feeling it invokes. However, I hate to burst everyone's bubble, but that's not really how it works. Conventions give you like this tiny incremental edge over not using it if it's a good convention. And that's only if you know how to use it properly. In terms of conventions that are musts, these are the only conventions that I think are an absolute must. You obviously need to play a kit over your no trump, like transfers and Stamen, and understand them well. I would recommend, since we're talking about no trumps, that you learn like the full kit, like Bays, which is like a way to handle after partner responds to Stamen and you get excited about it. Minor suit transfers so that you can key card in every suit. I would recommend, that. I would also recommend learning what doubles mean when they interfere and how to handle interference well, right? Because it's often in the modern game, your partner owns a no trump and they overcalled two hearts and you have like, some hand you want to do something with, but you don't know what. The other thing I would really recommend is two-way new minor forcing. That's a super good convention because it's really important to be able to set that game for us early. Aside from that, I would say support doubles is a fabulous convention. You can't just play support doubles unless you understand the full convention, right? And there's a lot of conventions like that are like a little more tricky to play than it seems at first glance. But that's pretty much it. Stamen, transfers, keycard, support doubles, and two-way new minor forcing. I'm probably missing something, but almost everyone plays most of these conventions, right? These are very common conventions. And, if you sat me down with just those conventions, I'd be perfectly happy playing bridge with you. There's literally, I have no pet convention that I think is necessary. The conventions that I think club players play that they really should not be playing, Two Diamonds Mini Roman is, I think, the goofiest convention ever. You don't know what suit your partner's short in, so you can't evaluate your hand properly, and you're taking up a lot of space, and you're not solving a problem. Because when you have that shape of like a 4-4-4-1 hand, you can very easily open at the one level. It's not solving anything. It's terrible. Okay. Sorry, everybody. I'm not a fan of XYZ, even though I like two-way no minor forcing. I see too many disasters with it, and it gets in the way of your natural rebidding. So I think that's a bad one. I'm not a fan of a good, bad two no trump because, again, it's actually very difficult to use, and you end up not showing your suits. You're bidding this two no trump thing instead, and the auctions can just totally get away. And there's one more important one: the stolen bid double. After your partner opens a no trump and they interfere and double says, I would have bid that, I'm transferring. That is not good. That is not good. You can't afford to use that double that way and try to play systems on. So it's much better to use the double as like a negative double and just accept you can't transfer it to your partner at the 2 level anymore.
What does your preparation look like going into a big tournament like the Nationals?
I always reread the system notes front to back. If your system notes are good, it's not as painful as when they're not. When I play with Bill Bailey, who's one of my sponsors at the Nationals, he does a great job of maintaining like a clean set of system notes. He's a brilliant programmer. He's actually the guy who wrote Deep Finesse. So he's got the mind to sort of keep this stuff organized in a logical way. I'll just read the system notes top to bottom and make sure that I'm familiar with it. And what I like to have in the notes is that anything that's complicated or unusual is either highlighted in a different color and or in a separate section at the bottom of the notes. And that way, the stuff that you're most liable to forget gets the most reinforcement in your mind. Okay. I think it's also important with your partner to do a little bidding before a big event comes up so that, especially like I play with a lot of people throughout the course of the year. It's good to like realign yourself with this partner, even though you know how you guys play. It's really good to realign yourself again for a bit so that you're mentally ready to start, jump right out of the gate with them. So that's pretty much what I do.
So you ramp up the Q-bids work?
Yeah, wrap up qubits work. I do like using BBO too because you can be on the phone together talking through the bidding in their practice bidding rooms. You can do it on qubits too, right? Of course, but I think on BBO it's more organic. Like you can just go fast, 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 fast. There's another thing that I've been doing that I would recommend for a partnership that's trying to tune up. A couple of years ago, I met a guy named Joyjeet Sansarma. Have you met Joyjeet, Adam?
Know of him.
Okay.
Yeah.
So he lives in India. I met him when I went over there for a tournament, but it turns out he's actually a pretty brilliant bridge coach. And what he can do, he's very good with computers and he can set up hands basically on any parameters you're looking for. He can even draw them from real life and you can compare with the people who did it in real life by going through like millions of graph hands with his parameters set. And it's like targeted bidding practice if you want to practice a specific convention or specific scenarios. And the reason I really like using him is not only does he have great hand selection for it, but he's a very good bridge player. But he knows to keep his mouth shut unless he thinks you're missing something. And then he'll just gently say, did you guys consider this? And just to make sure it's like a very full discussion. And so I've used him a bunch and a lot of other experts use him too, actually.
He's like the new Kokish.
He's like the new Kokish, I would say. Yeah, that's fair.
At a big tournament, what does your routine look like? What are you doing to come to the table as your best self?
I think since bridge is a mental game, it's important to keep your mentality in the best state that you can, right? And bridge is a punishing game. You'll have many sessions where you play worse than you would like to and maybe have a little self-doubt creep in. It's like, am I really any good? I just made 3 errors this session and it cost us qualifying. Like it's just devastating sometimes. For me, I personally don't drink alcohol anymore. I don't think that's necessary to prepare. I noticed that I wouldn't sleep as well and I would wake up feeling crappy in the morning and I just didn't want to do that anymore. Okay. So I think it's important to try to get enough sleep. I think it's important to try to keep a good attitude about things. And if your partnership is having, some difficulties, talk it out with your partner if you can and just try to keep things positive. For me personally, I try to stay physically fit in order to bring my best body and mind to the game. So like at a regional, which is not a major tournament, I will work out whenever, morning, between sessions, after the last session, whatever works. What I've noticed for the nationals though, is that if I work out too early in the day, the blood is going to my body and it actually makes it harder for me to play well. So at nationals, I won't work out until after the final session because I don't want to be like impairing myself by like having my body needing the blood. I want to be able to go to my brain. And it feels good. It feels good to take care of for me anyway, take care of my body. There is a lot of research that the healthier you keep your body, the more efficient your brain works.
And then what do you do about reviewing the results from a big tournament? Do you do it day of? Do you wait until the tournament's over?
It depends on the partnership dynamic, I think. Some things can actually be talked about at the table. If you clearly just had like a misfire between the two of you where you just clarify the situation quickly, but it's important at the table. It's mostly like about being at the table. Like you and your partner are on each other's side. You're on the same team. You should be each other's biggest fan and you should be respectful to your partner. I think that's very important. So I think the discussion should mostly come later. It can come between rounds. That's fine as long as it's done constructively, right? And I know a lot of my clients like to have the discussion as soon as possible after the hand so they can remember the hand fully and absorb the instruction fully, right? And even if you feel like their perspective on this hand, they just made a horrible blunder, it's for me very important to approach it respectfully and constructively, like the two of you together fixing the problem in general. And I try to take my ego out of it. Like I like learning new things about bridge and I accept that I will make mistakes and that there will be situations I don't fully understand. And so I'm actually very grateful if my professional partner can teach me like to do better in certain situations because it means I'm going to be a better player in the future, right? But not everyone is great at taking constructive criticism, right? It can hurt a little bit. So I personally am very, very careful about giving constructive criticism, making sure it's very constructive and positive and not personal.
What do you think separates, I'm going to call it world class from expert players? Let's say someone who is in contention in the spin gold, to someone who might win a match or two and be pretty happy with it.
I mean, obviously, if you have a good but not great player who misses a lot of things at the table, they're just not going to be as competitive with somebody who sees things more clearly. So I think the very, 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 very top tier of players, I'm talking like the Jeff Mextroths, Augustin Madala, people like that, have a slightly heightened sense of clarity over other experts and can just see the cards a little more clearly and a little more easily. Okay. As opposed to some of us, like myself, who sort of like make it through the hand and I'm good at it. I'm good at it, and I have the clarity, but I don't always have complete clarity at like complicated situations. It might take me a long time to think about it, or I may be defending on instinct once in a while, right? A really great player is rarely in that situation. Just have a lot of clarity. Another thing that I've noticed, and I noticed this from Thomas Bessy specifically, was an intense focus that he has at the table. And I think when I think about it, when I play against Mextroth or Thomas or a lot of these top players, they are giving 100% of their energy and attention to the task at hand, which can be a difficult thing for a human to do because our lives are busy, we're distracted. So maybe something's really bothering us in our personal lives, right? But when a really top player is at the table, that's all gone. It's just them and the cards. And, I really admire that. It's something that I've been trying to really focus on in it and like for my own personal growth.
Do you consider yourself a competitive person?
I think any top bridge player has been a competitive person at some point in their life because that drive to get good at something and like get better is a competitive drive, right? And I'm definitely a competitive person. Like I certainly was for a long time. I think that drive in me has shifted. It's changed because I don't really need to succeed at bridge to feel like I'm a good bridge player. Does that make sense? Like it's great when I do, but I'm secure. Like, okay, I'm a good player regardless. And so as much as I like to win and as competitive as I am, I've gotten better at losing. So when I don't win, it's not as painful and I don't have to like lash out at others, let's say. So I've mostly been told I'm like a very good partner to play with because, I'm not giving those frustrated vibes as much as some other people, and I'm more supportive. But it's something I had to work on. I used to be a very fiery partner, because those competitive drives would take over, right? And now I always try to be more mindful, like, okay, my partner is here too, and it's not good for them if I'm being too fiery about it. But I would still say I'm competitive. I mean, I want to win as much as the next guy, more probably.
You say that manifests more as loving to win or hating to lose?
Loving to win. I have made my peace with losing. I've had to. I've lost so much at bridge, and some of them were so painful. And you just realize after a while, this is happening a lot. It's gonna keep happening. In fact, that's one piece of advice I tell my clients before we enter a big event. You're gonna lose more than you win. It's gonna happen. You're gonna make mistakes too. Pre-accept that and just do your best at every turn that you can. And that's how you're gonna get your best results.
How would you say that Dan Korbel today is better than Dan Korbel, let's say 10 years ago?
I have a lot more experience at bridge, so a lot of situations I understand better and can handle more naturally. I'm definitely better at the people side of it, of like taking care of a partner and a partnership. And I believe I'm better mentally prepared these days than I used to be for the game. And so I feel like compared to myself 10 years ago, I've just been working on upgrading those elements of my game, as much as I can over time.
It's not that much technical that you feel is
No, I think
better.
my card play is very similar. I'm quite a good card player. I mean, all experts are really, right? But the way to improve your card play as an expert is basically to learn more unusual situations that hardly ever come up, right? It's definitely a better investment of your energy to focus on consistency, right? There's not much edge for me in improving my card play any further, but there's a huge edge in improving my consistency, right? And making sure that I don't make mistakes that are situations that on a normal day or a good day I would solve.
All right. Well, Dan, thank you so much. It's always a pleasure talking with you.
Likewise, thanks for having me on. I had a good time.
Good. I will see you soon.
All right.